All right. My name's Ruben Imbuki. I'm the one who's going to take you in respiratory physiology. So today we are starting the respiratory system and we are going to look at the introduction. And I hope you're going to enjoy the topic, which is a very simple and easy topic, which is very interesting. Yeah. And you need to know what happens during gaseous exchange, the anatomy of the respiratory system, and the parts which are involved in. So this lecture that I'm going to give you is going to consist of all those concepts that you're supposed to understand, okay? Then when you look at gaseous exchange, okay, don't complicate it or don't uh, get confused by trying to compare the metabolic reactions which happen in the cells and gaseous exchange, okay? So when you talk about respiration in terms of what happens in the mitochondria, and when you talk about gaseous exchange in terms of respiration, we're talking about two different things, okay? Because gaseous exchange happen at the respiratory surface membrane, whereby you're able to exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide, okay? But when you talk about metabolic reactions, you're basically talking about what happens in the mitochondria. How do certain substances get broken down? Because metabolism, you're basically talking about the anabolism and the catabolism. Okay, what it means when you talk about anabolism, it means what? Building up. Then you talk about catabolism, it means what? Breaking down. But here we are talking about how is oxygen transported from the surface into the tissues. What happens in the tissues, that's not our concern. We're just talking about how oxygen gets transported and how does carbon dioxide also get transported. Okay, that's what we are going to focus on right now. Then when you look at gaseous exchange, okay, we need to understand that we have got what we call the conducting zone and the respiratory zones. Okay, then when you look at these two, the respiratory zones, these are areas where gaseous exchange takes place. Then when we talk about conducting zones, these are areas where the gases are transported to their designated what? Designated places where they're supposed to be exchanged either with oxygen or carbon dioxide. So that's a brief summary of what we're going to look at under respiratory physiology. Okay, so let's look at the introduction. Okay, so the lungs are the main respiratory organs and they are both the conducting and respiratory zones. Okay, so the main function of the lung is to allow gaseous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide air from the environment. Then the lungs have a highly permeable epithelial surface area for gaseous exchange of about 70 square meters. Okay. Then what you are seeing now on the screen is basically showing the anatomy of a simple diagram of the respiratory system. So the nasal cavity is the air inlet. It's the air what? Inlet. This is where air gets into the lungs. Okay. It's the first part the air from the environment gets into, or that's the first stage or the beginning or the primary stage where air starts to enter into the respiratory system. Okay, so then as you go down, you're going to find that from the nasal cavity you are going to go down into the trachea. The trachea has got what we call the left and separating to the left and right bronchi. Okay, then when you look at the anatomy of the lung, you'd find that the left lung has got two lobes, then the right one has got three. Okay, so when you look at the case where it's pointing, you have got what we call the superior lobe, we have got what we call the middle lobe and inferior lobe. Then when we go to the other part, you are going to find that we have got what we call the superior lobe, which is on top, and the inferior lobe. Okay, yeah, so you need to understand how these parts function. All right.